Welcome to Music and Message, a weekly series that features musical performances and spoken reflections from a diversity of religious and spiritual perspectives. These gatherings seek to invite all learners into the fullness of life. And we begin by acknowledging with respect the Onondaga Nation, firekeepers of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the indigenous peoples on whose ancestral lands Syracuse University now stands. My name is Brian Conkle. I serve as Dean of Hendricks Chapel and Professor of Practice in the Department of Religion here at Syracuse University. Our Music and Message program today is being offered exclusively online. We do not have in-person guests today due to guidelines surrounding COVID-19. And while the chapel is mostly empty, our hearts are indeed full. And we wish to thank all members of our campus community for the courage and the compassion that is required to ensure a safe and meaningful living and learning environment. In addition to the small group of program participants here in the chapel today, we will also be offering pre-recorded elements. In doing so, we are reminded that the mission, the vision, and the values of Hendricks Chapel extend far beyond the boundaries of a beautiful building. Since its dedication in 1930, Hendricks Chapel has defined and embraced its role not just as the physical heart, but as the spiritual heart of Syracuse University. From its central presence on the quad, the chapel speaks to our core yearnings of meaning, purpose, dignity, hope. As a home for all faiths and as a place for all people, this chapel and the people and the purpose that keep it moving forward serve as a distinctive and significant reminder that our future depends upon whether or not people that navigate life differently can develop the aptitude to cooperate. This particular year, as countless citizens are thirsting for grace and hungering for peace, not only have we tried to bring people into this physical space whenever safe to do so, but we have tried to bring this space into the lives of others. Crisis has indeed given birth to both clarity and creativity. And as we have clarified our mission, we have sought to be creative with our methods, which is why I am so proud of our students, chaplains, faculty, staff, and countless others. They have displayed resilience and goodness in the midst of many challenges. They have sought to fulfill our mission of leading in service to our common good as a student-centered global home for religious, spiritual, moral, and ethical life. It is appropriate to share once again that our theme for music and message this semester is beauty, brokenness. In the midst of these unprecedented times, each week we have sought to explore the ways in which beauty can emerge from brokenness, and also how brokenness can be found within that which is often deemed to be beautiful. By exploring such paradox and such tension, we have tried to explore the role of joy, grief, celebration, and sorrow within the human experience. Today, once again, we give thanks for those who are participating, both here in the chapel and those pre-recorded elements. Diora Tursanova, Natalie Pereira, Jennifer Jordan, Linny Young, Christian Schmidt, and Michael Fedchuk. And as always, we give thanks to Alex Snow and the staff of Hendricks Chapel, who work to bring this program to thousands of students, faculty, staff, alumni, and friends. And of course, we are grateful for Dr. Annie Laver and Dr. Pepe Calvar from the Setner School of Music and the College of Visual and Performing Arts for their partnership and their leadership. To all gathered with us online today, thank you for being with us. May you be invited into the fullness of life.
Sounding brass and hopeless gain, though I may give all I possess, and striving soul my love profess, but not me. Soon turn strangely thin. Come, Spirit, come, our heart's control, our spirits long to be made whole. Let inward love guide every deed. By this we worship and are free.
Hi everyone, my name is Natalie Pereira and I am a senior here at Syracuse studying music and English. As a member of the Hendricks Chapel choir, music and message means a lot to me, and it is an honor and a privilege to have been asked to give remarks here this afternoon. I'm very grateful to be a part of the program. This time a week ago, I had some thoughts about the remarks I wanted to give today, but like many plans since then, that's changed. Instead, I've been thinking a lot about what to take away from this semester, and I keep returning to the image of a glass of water half occupied, to the constant question it elicits. Is it more empty or full? How much water is in the glass isn't truly the focus. The focus of this metaphor is how we choose to see it, because it is a choice. The water level doesn't change, but what we choose to call it does. Sometimes it's easy. Days where our cups overflow, days where the glass just looks totally empty. But if what matters is what we see, I think it's silly to consider only two scenarios. If we think outside the box, or glass, if you will, if we think a little differently, perhaps there are more conclusions to be drawn. If we consider that the half of the glass previously thought to be empty contains air, does that make it completely full? Or do we consciously not count the air? Is it less worthy of our count than the water? What if we're not looking for water or air? Do we then consider the glass empty? It would certainly not be what we need, so it may as well be. Why a glass at all? Why not a pitcher or a reusable water bottle or a mug with a pattern printed on the side? If we take it further, we may wonder, why is it always better that the glass be half full? In the metaphor, full is always preferable to empty, but that's not always true. Maybe you're not thirsty. Or maybe you needed an empty glass because you already have something to add to it. Maybe there is something beneficial in a glass half empty. Maybe empty does not mean lacking, does not mean worse. The absence of something is not always bad. Maybe you dropped the glass, and now you have to figure out what to do with the pieces. A word of advice, if I may be so bold. Don't throw it away. Make a mosaic. Find a new way to make art. Find that it's beautiful this way too. Find that maybe it was never really about the glass after all. All this to say that no matter how good or bad or worthwhile or difficult something may seem in the moment, what sticks with us is our perception, how we choose to respond. It is a difficult truth that sometimes we cannot change how much water is in the glass we are given. But at the end of the day, the amount isn't what matters. It is up to us to decide not only what we choose to see, but also what to do with our perception. If we think the glass is half empty and we want it full, what are we going to do to see it that way? If we see it positively, what will we do to keep it that way? If it's not about the glass at all, then what is it about? I do not mean to say that we should not acknowledge disappointment or grief. We must let ourselves feel, allow ourselves space to process everything going on around us, but do not get trapped. It is easy to wallow, to drown in what is thrown at us. It is more difficult to see that there is more to the situation than just what we've lost. Though we should not berate ourselves for working through our loss, We cannot stop there. Be brave enough to reevaluate, to see more than your first assumption. We must consider the possibility that our glass may be everything other than what we first thought it was. Sometimes it feels like we don't have a choice in what happens to us. I feel like that a lot nowadays, with so many factors of our lives out of our control, liable to change at a moment's notice. But what we always have control of is how we react. To choose to see not just the negative, because seeing that is inevitable, but to see the beauty too, in ourselves, in the world around us, in the straying from the script, the unplanned and unexpected. Perhaps, most surprisingly, to see that sometimes the real beauty is in how we rise from our brokenness, how we face it. I'd like to share 2 poems with you today. The first one is an older one I wrote reckoning with my own brokenness. I like to think I have this magic glue that lets me put my pieces back together, like a cracked vase pasted back to its former glory, but we know that can't be done. And each time I think I'm back to normal and I stand before the mirror, turning this way and that, looking here and there, looking, surely, for all intents and purposes, surely looking almost as I did before the first hairline crack appeared down the center of my nose, looking intently. All it takes is a slight movement, a slight thought, a slight something to send me toppling, shattering into pieces once again, wilted petals around my feet. I like to think I'm making progress in rebuilding, in not loathing the reflection, but sometimes it's hard to think so when I constantly seem to fall back apart. It's not an easy thing, though, to take years of bitterness and hatred and shame and transform them into acceptance. Never mind love. It's not done in the way that you wake up on Christmas and the presents just seem to be waiting there. It's the sort of thing that needs the painstaking piecing of your pieces back together, that requires hours of self-affirmation and weeks of gentle reminders and the slightly mad proposition that giving validation to myself might not be a waste after all. It is not the sort of thing that happens quickly, and it is not the sort of thing that happens without a little more falling to pieces. But I've started to smile at my reflection. When I'm apart, and when I'm back together, at every crack I can still see down to the original line down my nose. And when I am inevitably not whole for the time being, I look at the mosaic my fragments paint on the carpet around my feet and call it art. I wrote this second poem in quarantine last May amidst a lot of uncertainty. I wrote it far before I knew the theme for this semester for Music and Message, beauty and brokenness, despite how pointedly it addresses the topic. Beauty in the collapse to the ground, the bitterness of despair in the rise that must follow, the regaining of footing, refusal to remain, but instead to choose reclaim. Symphony in the silence, the space between everything but empty, in the freedom to fill an endless expanse, the room to grow, gentle, without rush. Stability in insecurity. The unsureness that surrounds in this undefined haze, in the questions unanswered, conversations unfinished, yet to be had, in the rest and in the rain, the stillness and the hurricane. Let us all choose what to make of this glass wisely, with patience, understanding, and compassion. Thank you. Stay safe and be well.
Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that the passing there had won them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference.
Throughout this semester, one of the books I have returned to frequently is by John O'Donohue, who wrote, "To bless the space between us." And blessing the space between us seems appropriate this semester. Here is another one from John O'Donohue from his book, "To Bless the Space Between Us." This is the time to be slow. Lie low to the wall until the bitter weather passes. Try, as best you can, not to let the wire brush of doubt scrape from your heart all sense of yourself and your hesitant light. If you remain generous, time will come good, and you will find your feet again on fresh pastures of promise, where the air will be kind and blushed with beginning.